a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody, welcome to episode number 217 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, February the 17th, 2024. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last week with our episode with Paul Hickey of the Sports Card Strategy Show. Really fun show. You can check that out on the YouTube channel. And next Saturday, our guest is Mario Alejandro, a big Twitter account and great follow over there. The PWCC Weekly Hockey Show is back tomorrow, and MC Monday's live showcase auction, the first one featuring only $5,000 plus items, will take place here on the channel on Monday. I'd like to ask you to join over 500,000 people who have downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and accurate comps and card identification features. The Center Stage Marketplace featuring super easy listing and transparent, reasonable fees is coming soon. So please join me in supporting the great team they have, the innovation they are undertaking, and let's help make Center Stage a great place to buy and sell singles. Also, use protection, practice safe swaps. VeriSwap is an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million is fully insured by their guarantee. Check them out on iOS and Android, and join me and VeriSwap founder Raymond Lee for our bi-weekly VeriSwap Trade Desk live on Instagram. Also, please join me in welcoming new sponsor, Filth Bomb Breaks. The team at Filth Bomb offers live case breaks and box breaks. And as we learned a couple weeks ago when founder Stephen Abendondolo was on the show, they do so with integrity and responsibility. If you enjoy group breaks and are looking for a company to break with, check out Filth Bomb Breaks, streaming live on Fanatics Live, 4 channels, 7 days a week. Very busy on there. Shout out Hobby News Daily, and Leighton Sheldon will be joining us for the Vintage Spotlight a little bit later. And also, Tag Grading is blowing it up at the Burbank Show today with our custom badges. You can now buy and sell tag graded cards on ComC, and the Tag X service is a game changer. Lorcana, Pokemon, other rounded corner TCGs are now eligible for grading. Visit taggrading.com if you value transparency and consistency in grading. As always, thank you, loyal viewers and listeners. Appreciate you as always. If you're not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast, please take a moment and do so. And as always tonight, your comments and your questions are in play. Let's get to it. Let's get to it, everybody. Tonight's guest started in the hobby in 2001, going to local corner stores with his buddies and buying packs of Panini soccer stickers. He was in and out of the hobby, but came back in 2020 as he was looking for something fulfilling and began to document his hobby experience on his Coach Co. TikTok and Instagram accounts. And he began co-hosting the Cardboard Coaches podcast in 2021. His favorite players of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo, Matt Sundin, Thierry Henry, and his favorite teams of all time are FC Porto and the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's originally and currently hailing from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Let's bring him out. Brendan Pereira, also known as Coach Co. Welcome to Sports Cards Live, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. Happy to be here.
It's good to have you. It's a long time coming. I'm glad to have you here. And and also, I mean, this is a fun one for me. This is my first show. As if anyone watched last week, you know, that was the last show in the old house, the old studio. This is my new spot. This is the new space.
I love it.
I'm excited and happy to be here and to have you on for this first show, Brendan. We've had a chance to get to know each other over the last couple of years now. So, like I said, long time coming, but welcome back. Welcome here.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be part of the christening.
Yeah, well, that's really what it is. It's definitely going to be a fun one. What's going on, Troy? I see you out there on Instagram. If anybody's watching on Instagram, we are streaming to IG tonight. Feel free to come over to the YouTube channel where your comments can be really brought in to the show over there. But I appreciate that, Troy. IC says 2 bald beauties that I love and respect. Dave and Adams Casual Troy from Troy LaCastro from Dave and Adams. All right, listen, let's get to you though. Brendan, Coach Co. We're both Canadian and we see each other at the Toronto Expo and we you've come to my networking event the Thursday night before the show starts, and it's just nice to become friends with you. We've sat on panels together, but we are two Canadian content creators. Do you think that sets us apart at all? Some people think, oh, Canadians are all nice and friendly. Do we have a bit of that going on, or do we say a little bit too much? How do you think it might set us apart from other content creators, seeing as we are both Canadian?
I definitely think that the saying "a" too much is in play. I mean, it honestly gets brought up quite frequently when I'm traveling, especially in like the United States, where they're like, "Oh, you guys really do say a." I don't notice it as much, obviously, and I mean, if you were to say it to me, I probably wouldn't notice it either. In terms of like differentiating ourselves, I mean, I do think that, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about this later, is that there's not a lot of content creators from Canada, or at least the ones that continue to put out consistent content. And I think it's important for us to be represented in the United States, and for them to see that Canadians mean business when it comes to collecting, and it's not just hockey. I mean, sometimes it is hockey, but there's multiple ways to use your voice. And I think it's important for us to show representation in the United States.
Yeah, and you've been doing a great job of that. I mean, you've been traveling to a lot of shows down south. This weekend right now, the Burbank show is going on. It's the first Burbank show I'm not at. I'm deeply saddened that I can't be there. I don't know if you've been watching on Instagram, but the VIP badges that TAG has been giving out to those holders, they're all over Instagram right now. And I'm like, I texted down to some of my guys, like, you got to make me one of those. Like, I'm not there, but I need one of those. They look so cool. I'd really like to be there. But you've done a great job of kind of representing Canada. But what you just said, I think, is really true, is that, just because we're Canadian, we're not only about hockey. Yes, hockey is our baseball. If baseball is America's pastime, hockey is definitely Canada's pastime. But you and me and a lot of Canadian collectors, we collect a lot more than just hockey: baseball, basketball, football, wrestling. You started off with soccer. Are you still collecting soccer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's harder for me to find soccer pieces because they're not so prominent. And, the ones that are prominent, I try to wait for things to either come down or to get a really good price on some of them. But every now and then I'll find, like, I'm specifically, like, I gravitate towards stickers, because that's kind of like, to your point, when you first introduced me, that's like how I started off. Right. And so I love stickers. And, finding those in graded copies or even in raw form is like actually really hard. And even if people do own them, it's not something they necessarily travel with. So it becomes like kind of challenging to just like stumble upon them. Whereas like if I was sifting through a dollar box, or, even perhaps looking through a showcase, I mean, it's much easier to find an actual card versus a sticker.
Yeah, for sure. I don't see them very often, especially up here at our expos and all that. But couple comments I see on Instagram. Daddy Rips says the Burbank was popping. Yeah, thanks, Daddy Rips. Now I miss it even more. Says that the TAG badges are the best show giveaway anyone has ever done. That's a really great comment to get there. Daddy Rips, thanks for joining the show. Before we get on with this, Brendan, let's go to the comments here that have come through on YouTube. Lots of them in there. So let's say we got Alan Terwell from Waxstat is with us. What's up, Al? Hope you've enjoyed the Burbank show. Linda, that's Michael. Linda's first. Hello to you. Michael 86 Collectible says, love the new setup. Well, I'm going to give you guys a bit of I'll give you a bit more of the view. Brendan saw it before we went live, but for you guys, so you can see, I got these are all like originally commissioned paintings. I'm just going to tilt my camera upwards so you can see the full extent of that. But we've got, there you go. There's the full extent of what's behind me. And then over there, we got 4 more, 2 showcases with cards. Those used to sit beside me at my old place. They weren't within the camera view. The further one back behind me, that's all the first year and second year of Upper Deck game jerseys from hockey. They're all in PSA slabs. And then the other one right there, this showcase here, are some of my favorite tags, hockey cards, and 1 basketball, 1 Shaquille O'Neal in there, that are all my favorite tag slabs that I have with my PC. So I love sitting in this room now, Brendan and everybody, because this is my new space. This is my office, my studio. It's my space in this new house, and Yeah, I'm pretty excited right now about it. So this is fun. 90s hockey collector, what's going on? Todd McDonald says, love the new. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. What's up, Stukes? Good to see you, buddy. Robert Scott, thank you so much. The professor is here. Jeff McMahon, appreciate that, Jeff. Laura, good evening to you. Al G, what's going on, Al? Good to see you, buddy. Jake Dahl, Kurt Renault says, good evening. Glad to finally catch the beginning of a show. Kurt, welcome. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Mid-Atlantic, what's going on? Jerry Hodges here. What's going on, Maple? The Maple Laughs, they won 8-2.
9-2.
Did you see that Matthews had his second back-to-back hat trick? Like he's at 49 goals.
8, I think. Yeah. He's an animal.
Crazy.
I know.
Crazy. I could see he could easily crash through 70 here. Bob Boozle is in the house. What is going on, Bob Boozle? The loud collector. Phil is here. Laura says you're going to need a bigger outfield wall for your sponsors. Kind of out of room right now. I mean, I lined them up across the top here. That's going to be the new look. But again, guys, I mean, these guys are all supporting me and the channel, and I just want to make sure I'm giving them value back. So I hope nobody minds that I've added them to the view. Eric is in the house. As you guys up north talk real funny, unlike us in Boston. Sure we do. Thank you, Autograph Curator. Muchly appreciate the comment about the nice new digs. Tom Newman, thank you. Says fire ass setup. Jeremy, thank you so much. Congrats on the new crib. Yeah, very exciting for me and my family. Thank you. Cards AH, appreciate the new space. Congrats, everybody. Jamie Croft, happy Saturday to you. Jeff Hart, thank you, Jeff. Same, appreciate these comments. I really listen, it's been a very, Brendan, I know I'm just going on here about this, but I gotta tell you, it's been a 2-week move, and we're finally in and settled for the most part. 86 says, Coach might be the only person in the world with a better mustache than Austin Matthews. He doesn't have a great mustache, Coach Co. What do you think of his mustache?
It's all right. I don't know. He's I don't know. He's got an all right mustache.
He's all right. Vintage Card Collector says, love the paintings behind me. I do too, guys. I've had these paintings for a while, but they were sitting in my rec room outside of the old studio. But in here, we got them all hung up. I had a guy come in and really like hang these up with he was using lasers and all sorts of stuff. So pretty happy with the layout. Bobby Burrell has joined the audience. Bobby, what is going on? Good to see you, pal. Cards AH, yes, I am still in Calgary. And Loud Collector says Matthews is a plug. That's coming from an Ottawa Senators fan, Coach Co. All right. Again, everybody, welcome to the show, episode 217, Sports Cards Live. Coach Co is our guest. And again, the first show in the new studio. Coach Co, let's get a little bit into you a little bit, and let's hear a bit about your hobby history and really who you are as a hobbyist. Fill us in, buddy. Fill us in.
Yeah, so my hobby journey starts, I mean, much like you mentioned, at like 2001, 2002, buying packs of Panini stickers at literally corner stores. I grew up in a predominantly like Portuguese and Italian neighborhood, and so most of my friends growing up were Portuguese and Italian, and I mean my family is entirely Portuguese, and so you know the Euro Cup and you know watching soccer overseas is like it was a big deal for us, and collecting stickers was just something that we did, and you know I actually got into like set collecting, and I've transitioned that into like my collecting nowadays as well, but set collecting, and at the time it was the books, so you would buy those Panini books that you know actually got super popular again during the World Cup, and the goal was to fill them all out, and you would either rip packs or you'd go to, you know, we would go to a place called the Galleria Mall, which was like close to my grandmother's house. On the weekends, on Saturdays, they'd have like a few vendors set up every Saturday, and it was nothing special, but you know at least one or two of them would have like just sleeves of these stickers, and you would, you know, pick out which ones you needed for that to complete that page or whatever the case you were doing. So yeah, the goal was just to complete the sticker books, and then it transitioned into Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and buying packs of Tim Hortons cards and McDonald's cards. So like a lot of the like entry level things that, I mean, we still see a lot of collectors or yeah, people being introduced to the hobby get into. And then, you know, all of a sudden you're a teenager and you need to find a job and, you know, fend for yourself. And so, you know, collecting kind of took a back seat, and then pandemic rolls around and I'm looking for ways to fulfill myself. And I'm like, you know what, it's not just about work anymore. Obviously, the whole world's just shut down. So what is it that truly made me happy? And I found, really gravitating towards nostalgia, much like a lot of other people. And I fell in love again. And I was like, you know what? Like, this stuff makes me happy. It's like most of the stuff that I'm purchasing is like not crazy expensive. Like, what's the harm in doing this? Like this, it's cheaper than like going out and getting drunk. It's, you know what I mean? Like I could be spending my money on so many other things. And I'm like, I every time I look at these things, like I feel something that's like incomprehensible and you can't even really articulate to people who haven't felt it before. And so I just started kind of documenting my process and, jumping in and actually spending money in a space as an adult. I had a lot of questions, and for the most part, I didn't really know where to go to answer these questions. And so, like I said, I started creating content and actually kind of like asking the audience, like, what's the deal with this? And why is this more expensive than this? And, questions that people would ask if they had the opportunity to, and I happened to get responses. And, from that, I would be led down a rabbit hole and I'd gain more information. And, fast forward 4 or 5 years, and now all of a sudden, I'm still learning. I think that we're all learning every day. And I just try to provide a voice and sort of like an entry point for people. I want people to kind of come to me for information and know that I don't have all the information, but I'll try to point you in the right direction. And, one of the things that I've always tried to do is like feature other accounts as well. So like if I'm getting my information from someone, I always feature, because I think that it's important for, I might have come across one story of that person, but, let me put you onto that person. So maybe you either find your niche or, really where that information is coming from so that you can get more of said information if I don't happen to come across it.
Yeah, because what I notice you do is, it seems like just about every day you find something newsworthy and you do up a reel and you put it out there on TikTok. And I'm not on TikTok really, but I'm on Instagram. I see it on Instagram, but you're also on TikTok. And I think it's a really good way to, especially for your followers, just to sort of keep up to speed on some of the stories that they may not otherwise find on their own, that you're helping them find yourself. But you made a comment when you were speaking earlier, when you said that you would look at these things and you get some sort of feeling about them, like about these cards or these stickers back in the day. And I want to just tap into that for a second, because I get that too. Like there's something about what we collect and being a part of the hobby that it's like a visceral feeling, butterflies in your stomach sort of thing, that I think maybe only true, like really true collectors, and not just like, listen, you can buy and sell cards and also be a true collector, but you have to have that true collector bone in you in order, I think, to really get that feeling. So that's really cool to hear. I want to get an understanding, because my first real when you first came on my radar, Brendan, it was because you were all over TikTok. What was it that took you to TikTok first?
That's a great question, actually. I just think I was getting the most responses on TikTok. I was getting like the most people referring back to me. They were like actually answering my questions. Whereas I found on Instagram, it was like less supportive, if that makes sense. Like I found that the people on Instagram kind of just made me feel like an idiot. They were like, "Oh, how do you not know this already?" And even like some of the things I was asking weren't even like really introductory level things. It was just like, "Oh, you should know this already." And I was like, that's not really a place that conducive to like someone who's trying to like get information here. And at no point did I claim to be an expert. Like, I still don't. Like I said, I'm learning all the time. Like, am I obsessed with this stuff? Have I put an unbelievable amount of hours in the last 4 or 5 years? Of course. But like, am I by any means an expert? Probably not, but yeah, it's just like I felt that on Instagram it was like, you're an idiot, and that's it. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm asking a question. So like, I think the real idiot is the person who, like thinks that they know what they're like everything. And so anyway, yeah, on TikTok it was people answering my questions and actually pointing me in the right direction. And I found that was way more supportive. And yeah, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to gravitate towards this and keep building.
It's like I say, there are no stupid questions, or the only stupid question is the one not asked. So
Yep.
kudos to you for asking anyway. I mean, how else are you going to learn? I want to say hello to Colin Murray has joined us. Ziggy, no, cheers to you. Bobby Burrell says the Galleria Mall had the best setup, went there a ton of times in the early 90s. Steve Elmore, hello to you. Hobby Champs has joined us. What is going on? And we got Troy and on Instagram saying crediting is huge, and of course it is. One of the things I think about, this is kind of off topic, Brendan, but like oftentimes I will hear someone will say something, or they'll post something on Instagram or Facebook or wherever, Twitter. I will see it and I will think to myself, oh, that makes sense. So I'll park it. I'll just park it for a while. A couple weeks later, I will quote it as if it's mine, but it's not, because I don't remember where I saw it. And it's like if I had a better memory, maybe I'd be able to credit everybody all the time. But to people that I have quoted without crediting, you have my sincere apologies. It's not on purpose. I literally just don't remember where I saw it. So, but something you said, really resonated with me, and I felt it worthy of sharing with more people. What's going on? Graham Reed and the Cardboard Corner have joined us. We got people on Instagram still. Wrestling Card Wizard says the magic of sports cards. No doubt about that, Wrestling Card Wizard. Let's jump into, I titled this episode, Is the Sports Card Hobby Doing a Good Job? We're going to get to that. We have a reason why we're calling it that, but let's talk about something kind of current event, if you will. The other day on my Instagram, I posted an infographic of all the alliances or sponsors and partners that I have. And you're also a sponsored content creator. Let's talk a bit about that. We have that in common. What is it? How does that impact you and your content, if at all, by having sponsors?
Yeah, I think it's important that if and when you get sponsors, that you don't make all of your content kind of like oversaturated as a result of having sponsors. And so one thing that I've limited sponsors at some point in time, because I want to make sure that my stuff is still as genuine as possible. And so, to your point, like, how does it affect me? Well, I can't just take on, 10,000 sponsorships and still have like the voice I want, if that makes sense. So I think that making sure that the sponsors you take on and, your own kind of morals and integrities align, and that your sponsors understand what your content is and how it's delivered as well. I'm very fortunate that the people who either sponsor me currently or have sponsored me in the past are well aware of, my stance on certain things or my desirability to say what needs to be said, and and be kind of accepting of, whatever happens as a result of that. Not to say that like I'm about to go start fires, but you have to understand that like I'm probably going to say exactly how I feel like 99% of the time. And so if you're looking for someone who's going to be PC and who's, probably not going to ruffle any feathers, like I'm definitely not your guy. Right. So, yeah, I think it's both of those are like super important to note if and when you get sponsors, and just like I said, just be as genuine as possible. Right. So just, if you do get a sponsorship, if you feel like you're being limited on what you can say, I'd probably reevaluate the situation, right? So, I'm fortunate. I still have my own business. I'm a personal trainer, so I can still have a voice, and I'm not entirely dependent on any income from the sports card hobby, right? Or from any of the marketing or any of that such. But yeah, I think it's just important to make sure that you know who you are as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You said it really, really well. And my experience is, I started doing content it's 3 years, 10 months ago now, almost to the day. Actually, yesterday would have been my 3 year and 10-month sort of anniversary. But in any event, it started out just going in front of the camera and talking. But as especially starting relatively early, there were YouTubers and content creators 10 years before the pandemic started, the very beginning of the pandemic. But if you got into the content game in early 2020, that ended up being pretty early. And like a lot of us who end up getting sponsored, we do it because we love cards. We love this hobby. We love the lifestyle. Sports cards is a lifestyle for so many of us. And then you just happen to pick up sponsors because people like what you're doing. And that's kind of a really, really cool thing. When I got lamemed the other day, which was a lot of fun, someone made the comment on his post, like, you need to know who owns what companies own all the content creators. And the funny thing is that, like, you can be a sponsored content creator. You're not owned by anybody. Whenever I enter a discussion with a potential partner or sponsor, I tell them that, I'm going to be honest and authentic about what I think about things, even has to do with yours. I've been doing PWCC shows for 3 years now, and you can see me tearing to shreds some of the cards that they're selling, and basically, I wouldn't buy this. This one does not get. I do not endorse this. I would not suggest anybody purchase this particular card. It's ugly for the grade or whatever. So, but people seem to often think that you are going to do what you are told to say, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I figure if I wasn't authentic in what I was talking about, I would have lost my audience a couple years ago already. So it's and maybe that's, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit maybe that sounded a little bit entitled, perhaps. I don't know, but really, if you love what you're doing, like, when I just last week did another podcast, and they asked me, what do you suggest people how to do content? I said, be authentic, be passionate, have subject matter expertise, entertain, inspire. Like, if you're doing these things, you're probably gonna deliver some good information. Everything's not gonna be for everybody, but everybody should be able to find one or two nuggets from just about every sort of episode. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, of course. I think that if people want to get to know you, they'll get to know you, right? So, like, I mean, I really don't care about people who don't care about me. Like, I just could not care less. If you don't take the time to get to know me, then, like, I don't give a shit. I was very good there, Jeremy. I was very good there. So, like, I don't know. Yeah, I think that as long as you're being your authentic self, like, you have nothing to worry about, right? And like I said, the people who gravitate towards you will gravitate towards you, and they'll see that, and you'll make the impression that you need to make, and it is what it is, right? Like, I mean, you can be judged by a post at any time. I mean, this is the dynamic of social media, right? I mean, this is what happens when you create content. People can listen to 8 seconds or 11 seconds or 22 seconds of a clip of a 2-hour podcast and be like, screw that guy,
Yeah.
or like just interpret it in the wrong way, and no one asks further questions, and it is what it is, right? So, like, I mean, I don't lose any sleep. I know exactly who I am, and I mean, hopefully you do too, and that's why we're here, right?
Well, 100, exactly. That listen, if it was otherwise, I would have packed this in a long time ago. I've had critics for a few years now. So, but like you, I don't care. Like, yeah, I pay attention to it a little bit, but it's okay. I know that not everyone's going to like me. I know that not everyone's going to agree with everything I say. And I don't even agree with everything I say, because sometimes I'll say something here. I only get one take. I can say something, go to bed at night and think to myself, damn, no, I said what I said at that point of the show. I didn't say it right. I actually don't believe,
Yeah.
But you have to cut yourself some slack and allow yourself to do that. Otherwise, don't do live streams, because you're not going to get it right every time.
I agree, man. And like, it's like that age old saying, like, there's like people in the bleachers and there's people in the field, right? Like, it's very easy to criticize when you're not doing the stuff, right? When you're not in it, when you don't know what the process looks like. I mean, there's so many times where I'll put out a video and I'll say something wrong, and I'm like, you know what? Like, it is what it is. Like, I said it wrong. It's okay. Like, I'm fine. But the comment section is just absolutely flaming me and calling me an idiot. And how do you not pronounce this? You don't know anything. Like, and I'm like, you know what? Like, it doesn't bother me, like, it really, I make mistakes, and like, here are my mistakes, welcome. Like, you've never made a mistake before. I mean, God bless you. Like, that's a wild life. I don't know how do you even make moves without making mistakes? I don't understand.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, you're so right. Yeah, we have to cut ourselves some slack here if we're going to do this. A couple more comments here. Dolly's Cards and Collectibles Niagara. Good to see you, fellas. Says my two favorite podcasts. Love your content. Thanks for all you guys do, Bobby. Thank you, Dolly's. Always good to see you. Hobby Champs notes that Austin Matthews up to 48 goals. Cards AH says quality content needs to be subsidized somehow. I appreciate those like Jeremy who make a point to be transparent about it. Appreciate that. Cards AH. Tom Newman says I need a shoe deal next. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Daily ones. Hey, I'm not going to turn that down. Cards AH says lememed. That's when you know you've made it. Well, I mean, hey, I was actually very honored by that the other day. I thought it was awesome. Ziggy No says you're both positive examples. Sadly, not everyone is as transparent. Fact of the matter right there. Chris C, transparency is key. If we had true print runs from Fanatics and Panini, we can make better buying decisions as collectors. I think that's something a lot of people would like to see. Laura, good to see you, says there are those out there who don't hear exactly that in the relationship with sponsors. Chris C loves the background. Thank you, Chris C. It's like a new vault on display. Yeah, I'm loving my new digs, guys. Vintage Card Collector says sponsorships, if handled professionally, bring more content and education to the hobby. That's a good thing. Al Terwell says if you guys could go back to day one of content creating and talk to yourself, what would each of you do differently? Alan, I got to say, never been asked this question, at least not that I can recall. I love the question. While I think about an answer, I'm going to put the Coach Co to go first. Do you have an answer for this one?
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest with you. I would change nothing. I just think that you can't fast forward this process. Like every single day I learn something new. And I feel like when I did it, I needed to do that in order to learn the next thing. It's almost like learning math. You can't, like, once you learn multiplication, you're like, why did I spend so much time, or like division, you're like, why did I spend so much time on like learning how to subtract when like it's so much more efficient to divide, right? But like you had to learn that stuff in order to learn that stuff. My biggest regret is not creating content sooner. So like if I had to go back to day one, I would be like, start 6 months before or start a year before, or, you know, what, like if I had the ability to go back, that's what it would be. And then I would just be that much further along. Another thing I would say is like, don't be afraid to invest in your technology. Don't be afraid to like put like actual money down, because like the minute you do, you're going to be that much more motivated to continue to create. Like I know that I struggled for probably 2 or 3 months. Like, should I buy a microphone, you know, like, or should I upgrade my laptop? Like I remember it took me like probably a year to upgrade my laptop, or a year and a half. Cause I was like, oh, this is like such a big financial commitment. And then like now looking back, I'm like, I don't even know how I survived as long as I did with that old one. And so, you know, if you're passionate about something, like just actually put in the time, put in the energy, fully commit to it. And again, I don't mean fully commit to it, like quit your job and, you know, run away from your family, but like actually do it. And I promise you, like, it'll be super fulfilling, and you're going to be learning stuff constantly. And that's kind of like what being alive is all about.
So well said, dude. Agree with all of that. I honestly share your answer. I don't think I have a different answer. I'm racking my brain as you're speaking, trying to think, what would I tell myself, or what would I do differently? Like you, I would have started earlier if I thought of it. You know, I remember going back several years, probably 10 years ago, I was sitting in my old house on my kitchen island before I was fully moved in even. I was doing a Zoom call with my buddy Darcy, and a longtime hobby friend of mine. We probably were chatting for 2 hours. And at the end of the call, and it was all hobby talk, at the end of the call, I thought to myself, man, an audience would have enjoyed listening into that conversation. But I didn't know about content, so I didn't even think about starting something back then. But when I think about the beginning of my content journey, that I think about, man, that should have been the clue, or that should have really been the impetus for me to start. But no, I waited probably 6 years before I actually started doing content. But what you also said at the end there is, if someone out there is thinking about it, you just got to do it. And not, like you said, it's living. I wouldn't change anything either, because I didn't know what I know now back then. So I don't know that I could even give myself any advice without experiencing it first and going from there. So we're going to read a few more comments here. Unless you have any response to that, Brendan, we're going to read. Okay, we'll go to the comments that have come in, and then the vintage spotlight segment with Leighton Sheldon is going to start right away. Jake's Toe says the best reaction to trolls is no reaction. Yeah, no doubt. Thank you, Benny Cromwell says the new digs look great. Appreciate that very much. Bobby Burrell says Jeremy didn't realize he was so good as he was when he started. And I said, you're going far. Now we're there. Thank you. Yeah, Bobby, you've been a great supporter of mine, man, and a friend for many, many years. So appreciate you, Bobby, very much. Bob Boozle says Jeremy Gamble would have groundbreaking a few years ago. I think I've heard of another content creator, something Justin Gamble or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the content, but I've heard other people talking about him. Very nice. Ziggy No says, Coach is dropping dimes. Great insights. And Al Turwell, thanks for the question. All right, Brendan, we're going to bring out Leighton Sheldon from Just Collecting Vintage Breaks for the Vintage Spotlight. I know you have a question ready for him. Let's bring him on. Say hello, Leighton Sheldon. What's going on this Saturday, February the 17th, my guy?
Hey, gentlemen. How are you? Nice to meet you, Brendan.
Leighton, nice to meet you as well.
I'm surprised you guys don't. You must have. No, you didn't know each other.
No. I mean, I've seen him.
I definitely recognize your stash from your content. Absolutely.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, wait, Leighton, thanks for joining. What do you think of the new digs, Leighton? What do you think of the new setup?
Big upgrade.
Really? I'll take that. That. Okay, big upgrade. He says. I love it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. Well, let's get to it. Coach Co, Brendan, please present. And I had a preview of what this question is. I got to tell you, when I saw it, I was like, great question. So let's hear what you got for Leighton.
Yeah, so we've seen Type 1 photos start to get increased attention lately after not getting the love that, I mean, quite frankly, they probably deserve. What do you think one vintage category that's probably not getting enough love right now that probably will or should get more love?
I thought it was a great question. I'll tell you what first came to mind, and we'll just take it from there.
Yeah.
So I would start and look at anything that is not currently graded by the grading companies. Because if you can do that, then at the very least, you're likely not paying that increase in the asking price because you can't get it graded. Thus, there's not going to be a multiplier. And so the examples I'm going to give are three, but they're all related. And they're actually not cards, but they're card adjacent. So they are wrappers, display boxes, and display cases. And they all have their individual niches, meaning, Brendan, if I, for example, had a beautiful 1952 top set, couldn't we all envision a day where the top single graded PSA 9 wrapper of a nickel pack wrapper of 1952 tops could sell theoretically for thousands of dollars, if not more, when ungraded already sells in nice shape for maybe $500, $1,000 if it's torn a few hundred? Meaning I could see people who own a set, even if you're not on the registry, wanting to have a really nice wrapper. And the reason being is, in many cases, it's like a piece of art. So if it's presented in high grade, I think right now, I'm not suggesting as investment, but per your question, I think there's wonderful opportunities to buy in each of those three sectors, especially if you're a true collector, because they're not grading them at the moment.
I love that. Yeah, and you know, the question doesn't necessarily have to be investment wise, right? Like, I think that Type 1 photos probably started off as just like people loving like what it was, and that is like an authentic original print, right? And then naturally, as it gets more exposure, it snowballs, and now all of a sudden, like maybe they'd be considered investments in some or in most cases, I guess, depending on what you have.
Listen, great point. One thing I wanted to add is, if you're not familiar with display cases, I don't think that they're going to start grading them or authenticating them. I mean, I'd be surprised, but they truly are rare. They're very visually appealing, and in quantity, we did this a couple of years ago with one of my company's Vintage Breaks. I probably have, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 of these, and they range from the 50s all the way to the 70s. And when you put them together, it's kind of like, I would say, a work of art in the sense of, you know, I'm not an artist, but visually it was really cool. And I just think that there's wonderful value for collectors in those three sectors, because if they were grading them and they were high grade, they would inevitably start selling for bigger dollars, because there's collectors who own those sets in high grade that I had to think some of them would really appreciate a companion piece to their set.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there.
I got a question, and forgive me, but as I said earlier, the only stupid question is the one not asked. What is a display case, Leighton?
Oh, sure. So in other words, take like a 1952 Topps, the baseball shipping case that all 24 boxes came in, the actual outer cardboard case.
Oh, simple as that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, like the 1952 Topps case, I believe there's only one known. I think the last owner of it was David Adams, and I don't want to misspeak, but I think he might have turned down like $10,000 or $15,000 for it. And certainly that's one of the key pieces. But can you imagine they built like what they did for starting lineups and things of that nature? Imagine they built a big holder, and you found like a 1955 Topps baseball empty shipping case. I've never seen one of those. It would already sell for thousands of dollars with no grading. And that's kind of my point, is that, as you said, Brendan, I've been collecting photos for 20 years. I just mentioned my podcast the other day. I've sold precisely 2. I know how many I've sold because I missed both of those photos. Yeah. I've never sold a display case. I've sold display boxes and wrappers, but those are a lot more commonplace, as far as those 3 things go.
I want to ask a question here about a type of collectible that I think a lot of us, if you are, probably 35 or 40 or older, I don't know what the age would be, but if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, maybe the 90s, you probably have some nostalgia for, Saturday, Sunday morning, sitting at the kitchen table, eating a bowl of cereal, and you're looking like we had no iPads, no phones, no nothing. I would be entertained by the back of the cereal box. And I've seen some people on Instagram start talking about collecting cereal boxes like Flatten, like Count Chocula or whatever it is, Frosted Flakes, early issues of that. Maybe the first time Tony the Tiger appeared on now this is away from sports cards, but I have nostalgia for that. I'm not going to get into it because I just don't have the capacity. But have either of you come across that before? Any thoughts on it whatsoever? Leighton, start with you.
Sure. I'll give a shout out to my buddy Liddy from, grade school. His poor wife puts up with him, and he's still collecting cereal boxes. If he knew about your idea tonight to go outside of sports, like, he's definitely going to get divorced because he's teetering on that anyway. And if you talk about like, oh, wait a minute, Leighton, that's a great idea. What's the first appearance of Tony the Tiger? Count Chocula, like, Jeremy, I think we should just cut it off maybe right now, but I think it's a great subject to discuss.
Yeah. Brendan, how about you? Any nostalgia for that kind of those days of eating cereal in the morning without any other stimulation?
I mean, storage for me is a big thing. So like I can't collect something if I can't store or properly display it. So you won't catch me doing it, but I actually do know people who own cereal boxes, whether that's like a limited print or, I think there was one like when Team Canada won. And I know another person was like obsessed with like the Frankenberry and it's like and that person doesn't have anything to do with sports cards. So like that person just collects those cereal boxes. So it's actually quite funny that you brought that up. So yeah, right. I think it's interesting. And I think that there's collectors in all different shapes and sizes. And I just like, I love to hear about these like different niches that people get into.
Bob Boozle here says, I thought about Wheaties boxes, but cards, magazines, toys was enough for me. I bring this up right now because Wheaties boxes have had a lot of famous athletes, a lot of Olympians. So that one, that really makes sense there. Bobby says that many of the 60s to 70s hockey-related cereal boxes get $1,000. That's huge. Jake Stowe says, I have a Jordan and Griffey Wheaties full box collection, 25 boxes. Okay, so there are cereal collectors amongst us right now even. Never you mind. That's pretty funny. Good stuff. So Leighton, do you happen to have a topic or a question or anything you want to throw Coach Coe's way, and we can all take a stab at it?
I do. I've been following your content for a little bit, and I think it's really great. And I think it's wonderful for the hobby. You clearly have fun with it. I guess a side of you that I've only discovered of late is that it seems like you're kind of into motivational content. And so I'm kind of curious, how did you find your way into that?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I've been a personal trainer for 10 years now. And so I feel like that goes hand in hand. But a lot of it comes from self-reflection, like a lot of self-reflection and just kind of experiences that I've gone through in my life. And fortunately, I've had a really good support system. And, you know, I've been able to be authentic and vulnerable and communicate things where I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to. And so I just try to create a dynamic where people, if they're not going to communicate, they at the very least have the opportunity to think about, you know, potentially outside the box or things that might make them a little bit uncomfortable. And all of that is kind of in a pursuit of just finding like true fulfillment and just really getting to the root of things. Like I feel like although that journey is a little bit, it's not a little bit, it's very, very challenging once you start to really figure out why you do what you do, and you know, certain things that might limit you. Once you kind of get on the other side of it, it's like what you're capable of is just ridiculous. Like I remember in high school, like I would skip school during presentations because like I was mortified of like talking in front of people. And you know, I think you fast forward and now all of a sudden, like I talk every day for, you know, hundreds, thousands of people. I mean, not in person, but you know, like on the internet. And I have no idea when I make a video how many people are going to see that. Like I've had videos do like 1 million. And you know, I'm thinking back on it, like that old version of me, there's just no way in hell that person, if you told them that you were going to be viewed 1 million times, I would have never even started in the first place. So I think that you know, what you kind of, the life that you want and that fulfillment is on the other side of that discomfort. And so I just try to encourage as many people as possible to look within and just, you know, just take one foot in front of the other. And I promise you, it gets better.
Well, I think it was very well put. I'm curious if you could share with everyone. Are you currently reading any books?
Not currently. No. Right now I've kind of put everything into like content creation. It's probably been 2 weeks, and Atomic Habits is a big one. So I mean, I would highly recommend checking that out. I think it probably helped kind of get the wheels in motion there. And then yeah, I think that everyone should see a therapist at least once, you know, just to kind of talk it out. And again, there's like some like negative stigma towards therapy, but I honestly think that everyone should be given the opportunity to kind of sit in front of someone and allow someone who is probably the best listener you're ever going to have just kind of dissect how you're feeling. And yeah.
Interesting.
So this book, Atomic Habits, I wrote it down. As I was writing it down, all I could think of were atomic refractors, because I love atomic refractors.
I have some here, man.
Let's see an atomic refractor.
I collect atomics. I love atomics.
I love atomics too.
We got an Allen Iverson PSA 9 atomic Bowman's Best.
Beautiful
the die
card.
cut. What else we got here? I got a few. I love the die cut atomics from the 90s. Actually, people throw those away. I'm like, no, I love those. What do we got here? I've been building out this 96 Bowman's Best set. Again, atomic die cuts.
Those are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're beautiful, and the way that they shine in the sunlight, and I'm like, this is. Then they're probably like $20 or $30 cards, but I love them when you put them together, and it taps into the set collecting. I'm like, there's so many notable names. You got like Aikman and Sanders, and I'm like, this is what it's about right here.
You know, let me just hold that thought, Leighton. I just want to say, when you just said, you know, they're only $20, $30 cards, I think I look at it like there's this like inverse relationship in my mind where the cheaper the card is, yet when you think it's super cool, so when the coolness factor goes up, and the price goes down, to me, that's the sweet. That is an awesome way to collect. When you can love a card, because you just said like, well, you know, it's only 30. Who cares? It's only $30. Yeah. It could be $5. It could be 50 cents. If the card is cool, the card is cool. Just because other people don't recognize it or there's too many of them, who cares? You love the card. I love that. Leighton, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, I listened to what I'm going to add on to that. That's how I started collecting photographs. So think about it. There was no authentication. People were like, why would you buy this? I mean, I've been collecting vintage basketball for a long time. I was buying like Jabbar and Chamberlain photos for like $20 or $25. My buddy Albersheim is listening to this. He was buying them with me a long time ago. I remember there was a dealer on the East Coast. Like if you spent $50 or $100, it would have been like the best photo you've ever seen. Those photos today individually would sell for thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So, go where your heart is. And as you're saying, sometimes, believe it or not, just because you think it's cool and the price, let's say, is low, sometimes the price catches up because other people start to think it's cool, and not through pumping and dumping, just because it's actually cool. But speaking of cool, I did want to mention this because I went to a convention today locally, and it didn't go the way I thought, but it went better than expected, just not in the way that I thought. And I guess I'll get right to it, try to be brief. So I took my 9-year-old son to a local show. It's in Parsippany. I think it's called like the Morris County Card Show. Very small. Now, of course, I went in there. I had cash. I had check. I mean, I'm like ready to go. I quickly realized it probably wasn't going to be that type of experience for me. And it was towards the end of the show, so there wasn't a ton of time. And we're walking around, and like I'm really trying to push things on my son, trying to get him involved. Like it's Pokemon. I'm like, oh, is this cool? He's like, yeah, it's okay. So, I mean, literally, we're zigging, we're zagging. And, I mean, there's not much real estate left in the convention. And you're talking about, like, on each of your guys' faces tonight, I could see smiles respectively when you're talking about different facets of either what you collect or the hobby. And it's wonderful to see, but it really doesn't get much better than to see that smile in a 9-year-old. So I want to share with you what happened. There was no cards he really wanted at all. And there was a gentleman selling these Funko Pops. Admittedly, I don't know much about them. My son listens to Ed Sheeran, so I think he got one of those. I've given him like a LeBron, a Jordan, but not many. But he knows what they are. And he's really been into this show called One Piece, which I don't watch. I'm not that familiar, but a couple of guys in my office are. And like there's a real life version of it, which I watch with him, but then there's also like 1,000 episodes of the anime. So fast forward, totally just like on a whim, like we'll start looking. And he literally says, he's like, Daddy, it'd be cool if they had some One Piece ones. And I'm like, yeah, I hope so. I'm thinking there's just no effing way they have One Piece of these. So you're going along the table. It's like the last section, and it's like kind of high above. I don't even see it. My daddy's like, Crosby's like, Daddy, that's Luffy. And then it's like all these other different ones. And I mean, I can tell you the look on his face, that smile, I'm getting goosebumps now.
I love it.
That's what it's all about. So it wasn't cards. And I really wish it was, but I'm so glad I went. And the reason why I went is because we weren't set up. I wanted to buy stuff, of course. I'll be very clear here. The admission was $10. I think I bought him a Gatorade, and these things were $70 for 4 of them. And he spent more money. I mean, I spent $70, but that was his allotment, if you will. And that was more than I spent at the show. I got to tell you, it's the best time I've had at a convention in a long time. It was wonderful. So I really advise you to like not put so much pressure on yourselves out there. Like if you do it professionally, then you're in my boat. But even if you do it casually, maybe don't worry if you don't get like the piece that's on your hit list, and just like keep your eyes and ears open to what's going on. We had so much fun, and I just want to share that story with y'all.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Leighton, thank you for joining us here tonight, Feb 17th in the new Sports Cards Live studio. Great to have you. Guys, you can follow Leighton on Instagram, Leighton_Sheldon, just_collect. And of course, check out his podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Trading Card Therapy. Leighton, good to see you. We'll see you back next week.
Absolutely. Brendan, it was great meeting you.
It's a pleasure meeting you as well, man.
Take care.
Take care.
Peace out, Leighton. Thank you for joining. All right, Brendan, we're going to do some comments, and then I got a couple questions for you. A couple comments really on the type 1 stuff that were coming through. Bobby says they need more exposure in hockey. Maybe someone should do a few podcasts. I collect unique ones and ones that were made from, I guess, cards that were made from them. The professor says, I like Coach Co's point of type 1 photos. CNBC News featured Ken Golden recently on type 1 non-sport photos entering his auction house. Very, very nice. Colin Murray says, iCert in Toronto grades wrappers and empty wax boxes. So someone's grading empty display case or display boxes. Yeah. At least Vintage Oddball, love me some type 1 photos. Very nice. Stuke says, I picked up the cereal boxes with Kellogg's 3D ads on the back. That's right. When you collect sports, you collect, oddball. There's a place for oddballs for a lot of people. Michael has a Gretzky Pro Stars box. That was a cereal for sure. Bob Boozle says, I think Coach Co has a good book in him. LGC says, hand-cut pictures from cereal boxes are graded, which is good, but you would hate to see a box be cut up just to get a small portion of it graded. Well, interesting comment. For me, it's like, well, if the rest of the box is boring, all I want is the card, I'd have no problem busting up the box. But the spirit of this comment from LGC applies more to like jerseys, like, we're cutting up jerseys. That's, I think, more, egregious in a lot of people's eyes than busting up an old cereal box. But point taken, LGC. Thank you for making it. A collector's dream Orlando has joined us. Welcome to the show. And Stuke says that Leighton Sheldon's podcast, Trading Card Therapy, is great, to quote Tony Tiger. Brendan, I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist that one. Thank you, Stukes, for the layup on that. Brendan, what does Coach Co mean? Your name is Brendan Pereira. What does Coach Co mean?
Yeah, man. So, again, we tie it back to the pandemic, and it actually started just before the pandemic. When I was working in a commercial gym, I was the assistant manager there, and we were underwater for a little bit. Actually, there was a bunch of people that either they kind of quit / they were slow quitting. It was like back when slow quitting was a thing. So they just like not show up or call in sick and then really try to stretch out, until they essentially got let go. And it ended up resulting in me having to take on way more responsibility and a lot more clients and service people that I honestly just couldn't. And so I was probably working like 17 or 18-hour days at the time. And and this was probably went on for like 4 or 5 weeks. And I remember there were several times I came in and some of my colleagues were like, I don't know how you do it. And I was like, well, I mean, it's got to get done, right? And they're like, you just come in here with this like king of everything energy, like you're gonna get it done no matter what. And I just laugh. I was like, it is what it is, And after that conversation, there was a few times actually where I was like, yeah, okay, if these guys believe in me, like if they believe in me, then like I gotta believe in me too. Not to say that I ever really questioned myself, but you always question, like you inevitably question yourself when like you're exhausted and you're mentally and physically drained. You really don't know like when it's gonna stop. And when the pandemic happened and I got laid off and I had to make a decision on like, okay, what is my future gonna look like? Am I gonna stay at this place where I think that there's really not much like progress happening here in terms of like from an occupational perspective, I'm kind of limited, like unless I open my own gym, which is like, in Toronto is kind of a hard ask, especially if you're working for someone in order for you to eventually like open your own place next to impossible. And I had to make a decision on whether I was going to go back or not. And I was like, I really didn't have much experience online at all. I had very, very minimal social media presence. And in fact, I hated social media. And I was like, I'm going to jump in head first. And this is the only option. And I'm going to figure it out. And so there was many times in the first, I don't know, 2-3 months and beyond where I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. But what I did was I leaned on this, like, if you bring that king of everything energy, like you can figure it out. And so for me, it was just kind of tapping into something that was like outside of how I felt in that moment, right? It was just kind of like, how can I become more than I am right now in order to be the person that I need to be, right? And, it ties back into when I was scared shitless, giving speeches. So I just not even show up, right? So I really kind of leaned into that. And when I was looking for something to like, what do I call myself? I was like, I'm going to embrace the thing that kind of got me here and that gave me the strength it took to quit, to make the strides, to make the first video, to, start the first class, send the first email. And so like here we are. And I do not by any means think I'm like the king of everything, right? It's like It's like being bigger than me. It's like tapping into something that I know is there, but I need to remind myself in order for me to kind of get the stuff I need to get done. And I mean, I try to embody that. Like, I don't know, you follow my content. I'm up at like 3 o'clock in the morning going for walks. Like I try to really kind of embrace that. Like, I'm going to do the hard thing because like, I know what I'm capable of now.
the way I see it now that I've heard you explain it from your perspective, and I really appreciate that. Seems to me like if you are a client of Coach Co Fitness, which is where you started with that name, you're really training people to become their own king of their own everything. It's not about you being the king of everything. However, you are also practicing what you preach by approaching life with that king of everything energy. And I think that's awesome, man. I really like that. I respect that, and I think it's a great signal you're sending out there to people who are following you. So I'm glad you had the chance to explain it, and wish I asked you earlier, but that's okay. Switching it up now. My next question for you is: I don't like you've shown a couple of your cards here today, but I don't often see you showing cards on your social media. Why is it that you don't do that? That you're not showing off your buys, what you might be selling if you sell cards? I'm not sure, but why do you kind of keep your collection to yourself?
It's a great question, actually. I found that when I was creating content early on, every time I would talk about a guy I was or girl that I was buying or selling, it would have somewhat of an impact on the market. And like, I'm not saying I would move the needle, like, but if you talk about a player, let's say people are trying to get into the hockey space, and you're like, you know what, like I really, here's a new Trevor Zegras card I bought, or like you start showing several Trevor Zegras cards, and this is actually what happened. You start to see things like bins just start getting hit for the same cards, because there's a lot of people that, and to my point earlier in this podcast, like people are constantly looking for information, right? Everyone's kind of looking for information, and they will tail you if you've put the money up, basically, right? And that's not necessarily what I want to do. Like, I actually don't want to move the needle at all. I want to just be able to collect what I collect. I want you to collect what you collect. I've had a lot of people ask me, like, is this a good buy? Should I sell this? And the response is always the same. Is like, if this card doesn't fit your collecting style, if you feel anxious about owning this card, get rid of it, right? Like, it shouldn't be that difficult. It should be very easy. It should speak to you. If you want to buy something, buy it. If it's within your budget, buy it, right? Like, and so I just try to kind of lead the horse to water and without forcing it to drink. You know what I mean? Where I'll introduce, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. And I try to feature as many different segments of the hobby as possible and types of cards. But I really do not want to have an impact on like what you're buying and what you're selling. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I keep the stuff close to my heart. Also, because I feel like I don't really need to flex what I own, right? Like, I don't know. There's sometimes where I get super excited about something and I know that like, again, like it's a $20 card, like I'll show it off, right? Like I'm like, oh, look at this like really cool card. But if it's like something that's relatively expensive, like I'm not going to play that game, right? Like I don't need anyone to know what I own.
Yeah, fair. Totally fair. I was just curious, and I think it's a responsible sort of approach that you're taking with that, because you do have a lot. You had a lot of followers on TikTok for sure. You're putting out daily content, so you said you're not maybe moving the needle, but maybe you are. If even 5 people say, "Oh, I'm going to go buy Trevor Zegras because Coach Co bought a Trevor Zegras card," that wouldn't have worked out so well for people. So you've learned a lesson, sort of thing, or you've seen how it can go bad.
I definitely have. And like, not everyone has the same tolerance as me, right? Like not everyone has the same financial situation. Not everyone, I mean, some people might watch one video, and we spoke about this earlier. They might watch one video where you mention a player, and that's the only point of contact that they have with like that market or whatever they're searching for. And that's the research that they've done. And they're like, all right, this guy said that, and this happened to me where like early on I'd talk about like Jude Bellingham or these are soccer players, or Yusufa Moukoko, both guys that like I very much believe in. And one of them is doing incredibly 3 years later, but like, does the price, I mean, the price is probably still down, right? So I have the tolerance for something like that because I'm like, man, I love what I own. I love the player. I love watching the player. But if you've bought it strictly for an increase, I mean, I can't guarantee you that you're going to make the right moves in terms of buying and selling. And instead of me being on the hook for your lack of accountability, I'd rather just not entertain this thing at all.
That was a great way to put it. Me being on the hook for your lack of accountability, because really you're not spending anyone else's money. They're spending it themselves, but people are willing to be swayed to make certain decisions based on what they hear. And I do think that's on them myself as well. But I hear what you're saying. I think it's a great approach and perspective. I want to go to comment here, Bobby Burrell, about back to the empty display box. He says he's been preserving empty wax pack display boxes for 25 years. He says, you have, talking about me, some of the gum ones makes them display so much better. I have 3 Bobby Burrell preserved gum boxes from the 50s and 60s sitting right there. I'll show you guys sometime. I've shown them before, but they are awesome. Joe Perot, greetings from the Burbank show in Ontario, California. I know Joe was at the show. Hope you had a good day there today, Joe. And Mitch Grotman of Grotman Cards has joined us. Good evening, Mitch. Good to see you in the chat. I want to ask you next, Brendan, about the collecting and investing thing. Again, the title of this episode is, is the sports card hobby doing a good job? And I want to ask you that question point blank too. But first, I want to know, because you travel to a lot of shows, you create a lot of content. I don't know the degree to which you consume content. So maybe start off with that. First of all, I'm curious, how much content do you consume as a fellow content creator? And then where do you fall on, are you investing in cards or are you just collecting cards? How do you feel about the whole collecting, investing dichotomy that exists within our hobby?
Yeah. So the beauty of my content is I can't really create it unless I consume it, right? So like I'm definitely consuming. I consume a lot of content. There are some weeks where I am less, I guess, eager to consume content depending on what's going on in the hobby. Yeah, so I definitely consume a fair bit of content. Personally, I just can't sit still for prolonged periods of time. So it's for me, it's like the easier it is to digest, the more I consume of it. I do listen to, a podcast, I listen to yours. And with respect to the second half of your question in terms of like investing versus collecting, I mean, there's cards that I think are absolute no-brainers, and those, and truthfully, the ones that I just keep buying more of, because I'm like, it's still cheap, or it gets cheaper, or whatever the case may be. And those things, I'm like, I make jokes. I mean, one specific card in general, I'm like, either I go or he goes. So like, either the player dies or I die. Like I don't know. That thing's not leaving. So yeah, I think I do mess around a lot with like ultra modern, specifically hockey, and I treat it like fantasy hockey. I love it actually, because it's an opportunity for me to watch a guy get drafted, and specifically with hockey, you watch a guy get drafted, and probably 3 years later, he finally makes the NHL. In most cases, I'm not talking about like top 5 picks, because those are like no brainers, right? Those are the guys that come out the gate, and like those are the guys that you don't buy. Like,
Right.
if like
Right.
those are the guys I don't touch for 2 years, right? And ironically enough, is like if I buy a guy who, let's say, got drafted in 2019 and now it's like 2024 and he made the debut and he's like 23 years old and he's like finally playing well. But I bought him in, when his first card came out in 2020 or 2021. And I'm like marinating on that. And then the guy who got drafted this year, whose stuff came out and it was super hot, or not this year, but like 2 years ago, for instance, it came out super hot and now it's on the decline. I'm like, I can actually sell the stuff that I bought early that, I'm not entirely invested in this guy, but I do think that it was a buy because I saw a potential that probably the rest of the market didn't see. I can like use those profits to buy the guy that I actually kind of wanted to buy in the first place and at a better price. Right. So like, it's actually, I have a lot of fun with that. It's a great way for me to like recycle, the funds that are in the sports card space for me. Right. Without having to add a ton. I think that's really important for me. Not having to put too much into this where like it's like financially taxing. I mean, there's still times where like I'll pop off and I'm like, ooh, you know, like, okay, I need to take it easy a little bit. I need to sell something. And I'm sure most people do have that. But I play the ultra modern game where like I'll buy someone for, like I said, like 2 years, 3 years in advance, and I'll sit on it. And I'll do that with several players, and then I'll sell those and buy the guys that everyone was talking about, or like that got injured, right? Like I love buying injured guys. Because like, I mean, chances are people just forgot about them. You know what I mean? Like it's always the flavor of the month. And if you remember that, you can kind of like buy what you like in terms of ultra modern stuff, or the guys that you think actually will make an impact, and just play the market that way. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my stance on investing versus collecting, my own personal stance.
So you're collecting, but you will capitalize on an opportunity if you see one. Maybe you see a guy, you think, oh, he's cheap now, or he just got injured, great time to buy. He'll probably come back. If you were looking to invest in a guy like Gabriel Landeskog, doesn't seem to ever want to come back and play. He still has the captaincy for the Avalanche. It's kind of funny, but there are cases where that will work. I wonder if that would have worked with Connor Bedard this year. He just came back last night after a bit of an injury, but he was too flavor of the monthy to even that to have.
You got to wait like 3 years.
Yeah. You got to wait till he gets hurt for 6 months to buy his cards at this point, I would think, for sure. All right. Dylan Randucci says, have a good long weekend, you guys. Thank you so much. And Foul Five Ball is late, just left the Burbank show. So we're getting people joining us from the Burbank show. Bob Boozle says, flavor of the month. I'll stick with bread and water. Bob Boozle, we got to break you from prison, my man. If that's all you're getting is bread and water. All right, Brendan. You know, I'm gonna put the question out there. It's the title of this episode, and we're just gonna freestyle and see where it takes you. Do you think the sports card hobby is doing a good job?
I think the sports card hobby is doing a better job than it probably ever has. But this is me speaking as someone who wasn't in before 2020, and I think that that's also kind of indicative of like how the sports card hobby operated. You know, like I don't think they did a great job before of pulling people in. And I think that we're doing a really good job now of bringing eyeballs to it. I think we can do a much better job of keeping people here. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the support systems that are in place and encouraging other people to share in a space where they can be open and honest, and they're not going to get torn down. I think that's like very crucial. I think that, you know, people should be creating content, whether creating content means like still images, or whether that's like showcasing like videos of your PC or a pack opening or whatever, like gets you excited to be in this hobby and to communicate with other people. And there's definitely more of those people that have ever existed. But I just think that we can do a better job of supporting those people.
Supporting, yeah. And let me clarify, when I use the term is the sports card hobby. So Jeremy, what do you mean? Is the sports card hobby doing? The hobby can't do a good job. The hobby is this abstract thing. It's not any individual people. But actually, the way I'm thinking of when I ask the question is, I'm not talking about the industry that the hobby resides. I'm not talking about the companies that are within the industry that also contains our hobby. I mean the hobbyists, our hobbyists. And I think you answered it that way. Our hobbyists doing a good job. And then you ended by talking about there could be, I think you said, a bit more support happening. Speak a bit more about that thought.
Yeah, I'd love to, actually. I just think that there's a lot of instances where there's a bit of like gatekeeping going on of like information, or like I mentioned previously, where there's not the proper channels in place in order for new people or people who have been here for, you know, not as long as perhaps you or many other people who have been on this channel. And so it's almost that is held against people who have just started or whatever the case may be. And it's actually quite discouraging. Like, I'm not saying this like we're good. You know, I've talked about this already. Like, I don't care. I got thick skin. You say whatever you want to me, and that's cool. But I mean, the average person, if they wanted to share a hit, let's say it was just a I don't know, like a Mike Trout base card. They don't really know. Let's say someone opened a pack of baseball cards for the first time, posted a Mike Trout base card. I mean, I just don't know how many people would just be like, that's a shitty base card, or do you know, like and it happens a lot. I see it happen a lot on so many different like channels, and I feel terrible sometimes where I'm like, or like, oh, that's not even a hit, that's $10, or so I just think that we can be a lot better. It's not all dollar value. It's not about who knows the most, and because you don't know enough, you can't speak. Like it can be way more encouraging than what we're doing right now. And I think if that happens, the retention, and you keep people in the hobby for long enough for them to really find out and maybe explore new niches. And I think that's when you really start to fall in love in this space, right? I'm not saying you have to be tied to one specific hockey cards, or, I mean, I mentioned this to you previously, but like not on the actual channel, but recently I had the pleasure of picking up a ticket stub from our boy Dave at Signed and Slab. And it's Austin Matthews auto rookie debut. And it hit a spot for me where, and I've been, like I said, full time in this hobby for the last 4 or 5 years, and only now, because I've been in this space and consuming content and talking to so many different people, and fortunately had encouragement and all this stuff, did I find this new sect where I'm like, man, I really kind of love this thing. Like, I don't care how big this thing is. In fact, like, I want to display it because it's so displayable. Like, and so that took 4 or 5 years for me to find this thing, right? And to hold one and to be like, wow, this actually feels super special to have this thing. And so I just don't know how many people we're losing by just not being encouraging early on, and to allow them to have a voice and to communicate with other people and find their niche and their own little community. So that's how I think the hobby could be better.
Yeah, I think what I heard you say there, a couple things obviously, but you can go on social media, share your hobby experience, maybe share a card that you love, and then people are going to poop on you, and you might say, well, forget this, I'm out. I don't. What do I need to expose myself to that sort of treatment? Yet if we're more supportive, those people may continue to search out and find out what lane they really enjoy being in, and maybe become, hopefully we're not precluding too many people from becoming hobbyists. And when I say we, I just mean the greater hobby. And even you go on Instagram, Facebook, and I love these Facebook posts. People do it a lot where they're looking for cards, so they'll show some of their best cards from that product. And they'll say, hey, pictures are just for it, not available just for attention, but you're showing some big cards, and maybe you're on Instagram and all you're seeing are big cards everywhere. And then someone who just got in is like, well, I just opened up this one pack. I got an insert that sells for $3.50 and a bunch of base cards that you can't even sell for the shipping. And maybe there's that feeling of inadequacy, and we can lose some of them. And they haven't found their lane yet. They haven't become comfortable yet with spending more money on cards. So that's where they're at the moment. And I think I agree with you. I think it's important that we are supporting all new entrants into the hobby, because we know how much fun and enjoyment we can get for it. Maybe they can too, and it will enhance their lives. If the hobby is not enhancing your life, get out of it. We're not gonna, we don't want you here if you're miserable. There's a lot of miserable hobbyists. We see them all the time on social media. Why are you guys putting yourself through that? Why are you still here if you hate it so much? And to those people, I say, go get yourself some help. And if that help means just stopping the hobby, stop it. We don't need you that bad, but you have to be miserable all the time. Let's instead focus on supporting people who want to be here. I think that's kind of where my head. But I want to touch on base cards. We had a couple of comments in the chat. Hold your thought right there for a moment. First of all, Ziggy No says, tear each other down. There's too much envy. We tear each other down too much. Envy is strong. Definitely true. Bob Boozle says, base cards are cool, social media fools. I mean, he's not wrong. Right? Yeah. If you love a base card, love that base card. Base cards have been dragged through the mud in the past few years. I think it happened because there were thousands of them being sent to PSA for grading at the beginning of the pandemic when they had that big backlog. and base cards have become kind of they've taken the brunt of the hobby's frustration. Mark Santucci says, as long as there are card shows, affordable prices, card stores, both dealers and collectors making money, then the hobby is working out fine. Yeah, that covers off a lot of the components of the hobby right there. Fallow Five says, why post your cards in the first place? It's only showing off anyway. I think I don't think it's only showing off. I think it's also finding commonality with other people. I did this thing, you probably saw this, Brendan, about a month ago, like Card Bros. Like I'd see someone with the card where I own the same, like we're Card Bros. We own the same card. Like that's cool. It's kind of like back in your early 20s, it's like, oh, you were dating Jennifer Lawson, so was I. Hey, we have something in common. It's like it's not. I don't think it's only showing off. I think there's an aspect of flexing, but it's also being proud. Like I'll show off. If I'm working on a set, I'll show my progress on that set. Like here's 45 cards. I'm looking for more. And here's the ones I have so far. I kind of spoke to that earlier when, people do that on Facebook, but it's like, I'm not disguising it as I'm looking for more cards. Here's my 100K worth of stuff. It's like, here's my $1,000 worth of cards. I'm looking for more, but I love this hobby. I love collecting this set. This is a lifelong pursuit of mine. So I get there's nuance there. And I hope that was clear. I'm not sure if it was that clear to me even, but okay, keep it on going here. Bob Boozle says, if my wife can show off her feet online, then I can show off my cards. I have no issue with that, Bob Boozle. Phil Daw says, you can start buying Tage Thompson cards again. I just picked up tons of them for cheap. Triple V says, dang, Jay Lee, new card room looks awesome. Congrats on the new spot, by the way. Thank you, Triple V. Really appreciate that. Phil Daw says, I don't see any Solani on the wall anymore. What happened? Solani is in here. He's in this showcase right here, and I'm looking over here, you guys, at this like bookcase, a built-in bookcase on my wall. It goes 9 high, 9 shelves high, 3 wide, and I have a whole one is dedicated to Tima Solani right there. Right beside it are the unopened gum boxes that I got from Bobby Burrell. I'll show those to you guys soon enough. Fallow Fireball says base cards are the only true rookie cards. Parallels are not. Tomato, I guess. It depends how you want to look at that, but I guess technically that is probably true. Ziggy No says accomplishment. I don't know what that was in relation to. Stuke says, besides what Jeremy said, I post cards to show people there are alternative cards to collect. Hopefully it's educational. Great reason to because here's another thing, Brendan, and I want to get your thoughts on this. When I post a card or a gang scan of cards on Instagram, I'm going to tell a story beneath. I'm not going to put the cards and say what it is. Lots of people just put the card, say what it is, and that's the end of their post. I'm like, that means nothing. Like, why do you like the card? Tell me something about why that card's important to you. Otherwise, are you just advertising? Like that's just flexing, in my opinion. I don't often double tap those ones because there's nothing to double tap. I can see that on any online marketplace or Google Images. What about you? And listen, I'm not trying to discourage people from posting. If you don't have anything to say, fine. But I prefer those posts that tell a story. What about you?
I love it. And I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have even found this card over here if it wasn't for something like that. So like this is a Pacific, it was a 2001 heads up Kovalchuk. And this was a raw card. And the only reason why I even found this card is because someone had posted the 2001 heads up Pavel Datsyuk on their story. And I was like, what card is that? I was like, what card is that? And so I think I screenshotted the story and I went on a deep dive trying to figure out what the set was. And, fast forward, and I probably own, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 cards from the set because I just love the look of these cards. And every time I'm at a card show, especially like a smaller one, I'll go through the dollar boxes, and if they've got like 90s and early 2000s stuff, like I am on the hunt for like these Pacific cards, and not specific, but Pacific. Yeah. But like I wouldn't have even known this existed if someone didn't post them, right? So I think that if you post, you're giving someone else the opportunity to see that something else is out there. And given the fact that we've got 100+ years of sports cards like at our disposal. It's very hard to know every set of every player of every sport, of every photograph. So by posting that, I mean, you're giving someone else the opportunity to also fall in love with that card.
100% agree with that. We had a comment that came in here. I got to find it because I thought it really hit the spot. And I'm not finding it really quick, unfortunately. So I'm just going to get to it more naturally. First of all, Mookie Chilson says the Venn diagram of healthy self-expression and straight up flexing overlap. It's all good. But yeah, sounds good to me. Ziggy No says Eskimo brothers fishing from the same hole. Phil Daw says for modern hockey, all rookie year cards are rookie cards. For vintage, it is different. And that wouldn't just be hockey. That would be, I think that approach you'd have to take with all sports, but you will get pushback on that. Here, Al G says, when you show your cards, you are celebrating a player, a set, a series, etc. I would rather see cards online, even if unattainable, than have them hidden in a box. Right on. The other benefit to posting cards from your collection is that you might be missing one or two, and someone's going to see them and say, oh, hey, I saw you posted those 86 Fleers. Do you have this guy? Because I have it. And sometimes they might just send it to you because maybe it's a base card not worth anything, or they'll offer it to you and you can pay their price and acquire the card. That's happened to me a ton of times where I've shown a card and now people reach out to me and say, hey, do you have this one yet? Might not even be theirs. They're just giving me a reference, which I think is amazing. A huge benefit to showing cards that you have on your social media. Mookie Chilson says, I learned so much from my pal Stuke. He's a great asset and resource with an amazing collection. He's talking about Stuke's baseball cards and curiosities right there. Guys, check out his YouTube channel and throw a subscription over to Mookie Chilson's pal Stukes. Louis has joined the show. What's going on, Louis? Good to have you. Thanks for being here with us tonight. All right. Bobby Burrell says, if there were only an app for vintage hockey, there is. It's called Needum, Needum, I believe. I'm going to show you guys what this app looks like. And right there, right in between my fingers, with the yellow and orange triangles, it's called Needum. 2 E's and 2 U's. Phil Daw says the entire point of collecting sports memorabilia is to display it. It's like buying a sports car and throwing a tarp over it. Well said, Phil Daw. Well said. I definitely agree with that for sure. All right. We were talking about, is the hobby doing a good job? And we talked about, we could support each other a little bit more. I think a lot of people are doing a great job of supporting others. I get a ton of support via my social media accounts, people DMing, liking posts, commenting, all that. It's very nice to get support. And I think we could, like you said, Brendan, we could be doing a better job providing more support, the hobby providing more support to each other. What about collectors? And do you find that we, and by we again, I don't, like I said, I'm not talking about the industry. I'm talking about the hobbyists, and I don't even know which sector am I talking about. Content creators, collectors, investors, flippers, shop owners. I think I'm just talking about like everybody. But are we doing a good enough job at spotlighting the benefits of collecting and specific collectors themselves?
No, I don't think so. And that kind of ties into the support aspect, right? Where I think that there's a lot of people who have unbelievable PCs. I mean, one of the things that I love featuring is people who set collect, because I love set collecting, and specifically when people end up putting together either nameplates or they put together like those massive logos. Like I featured an Islanders one not very long ago on my channel. Another one was like a giant NASCAR patch. So it consisted of, I think, 20 cards, and it ended up building out the McDonald's patch. I love those things, especially if someone's like missing a card. I love trying to get them that card. So like I'll make a video about it and try to get, someone to reach out. And I mean, oftentimes people in the comment section are like, oh, you just increased the price of that card. And I'm like, if I saw that someone needed that card, I and that's all they needed, I'd make sure I gave it to them for like at a fair price, if not just gave it to them, right? So I think that we can all do a better job of like showcasing player PCs and again, cool cards, sharing them to your story. Set collecting, same thing. If you know someone that's looking for a specific card or they've posted about it, like, I mean, put that out into the universe, right? Because that's how social media works. That machine, the more times you share something like that, the more times like it'll get shown to people, right? People, the Instagram and the Twitter and the whatever will tell people like, hey, like you should see this because people keep posting it, right? And so, I mean, you're furthering the collecting in general by doing something like that.
The algorithms.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. You know, there are lots of YouTubers out there that are really just focused on their collections. There are lots of channels out there that are really focused on their friends who are showing their. And I'd actually direct people, if you're looking for more collector content where it's really like people showing their mail days or showing their personal collections, or a portion, maybe they'll go through a few different areas of their PC every episode that they're doing. And I'm not going to shout out anyone specific, but what I will shout out is there's this YouTube Hall of Fame that was started, a grassroots thing here within our space on YouTube. And I believe most of the Hall of Famers, the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Famers, it's that kind of content. It's not these interview shows like what I do or what you do. It's mostly people who've been doing and showing their mail days for like 10 years or so already. Not all of them, because it's a new thing, but that's a good. I would go to I don't know if it's called the Sports Card YouTube Hall of Fame, but you guys can Google it or YouTube search it and you'll find it. And then you can go to the website and see all these YouTube Hall of Famers, and you can then check out their channels and support those collectors, whether they're Hall of Famers or not. That doesn't really matter. That's just this thing that this crew came up with, but it's still a good list of collector type content. So I want to support that by shouting that out and letting people know that they can go find some of that over there. I want to do some more comments, but I also wanted to ask you, we're talking about supporting. There is the opposite of supporting, which I don't know what that word, discouraging maybe. There's plenty of, there's a lot of that kind of content out there as well. When I ask you the question, what turns you off in the content space? Is it discouraging content? Is it other? I'll open it up, but I'll lead with that.
What turns me off in the content space? I mean, I guess the fact that the algorithm is designed to pump like negative content, right? Like that's literally how most of the stuff that comes across their feed will be stuff that people have interacted with. And most of the time, those things that have been interacted with, they've been interacted with because people are outraged, and because happy people don't necessarily comment. People who are they just enjoyed that. They don't go out of their way to comment being like, I really enjoyed this. But if someone vehemently disagrees with you, they will comment, right? And so naturally that kind of content gets pushed. And I think as a result of that, like that's the kind of content that you're going to see subconsciously, unless you're actively seeking out like opposing content. Another thing I'll mention is like, if you consistently interact with negative content, don't be surprised that negative content comes across your feed, because you're kind of telling the algorithm, like, this is the stuff that I want to keep seeing because I keep engaging with it. Right. So I think that kind of specifying or like really catering your feed to like what you want is a great way to really enhance your hobby experience.
Yeah, click on things that you want to see more of, not that you want to see less of. But sometimes it's tempting to click on those loud, alluring type of thumbnails and headlines and all that. Phil Daw says grifting sells. I think that might be accurate right there. Laura says, in Beckett monthly magazines, there were often stories related to unique cards, for example, wrong named players. And that was a personal accomplishment when you were able to find that card. Yeah, for sure. Foul Fireball says, I do see your point on rare stuff. It's educational. Yeah. Again, if you're going to post your cards on social media, please tell a story. I want to read the story. I want to know why you love that card. Why did it make it into your collection? If I already know you're a Jerome McGinley collector, like our friend Al G in the comments, I don't need as long of a story because I know it fits in. But that's just me, who happens to know Al. Not everybody knows Al, so tell the story. People want to know. Sports Card Stallion says shout out to 2 Canadian hobby legends. That's lofty praise there, Sports Card Stallion. No, I'm not talking about Wayne Gretzky and Steve Eisman. I'm talking about Jay Lee and Coach Go. Thank you, Sports Card Stallion. Phil Daw says, I think an important thing that needs to be more explained is that auction ending sales are not comps in a dealer/show, retail, eBay buy it now setting. Auction sales have limited exposure and time. It's an astute comment. Here's why, because not everybody is available to bid on every card. You know how many times I forgot to bid on a card, or the card is ending when I'm on an airplane and I don't bid. I bid at the end. That's just the way I've done it for 20 years, 25 years now. If we're talking about eBay, I come in at the end and bid. If it's a PWCC sale and I'm on a plane, I'm out of luck. You're not going to get to buy that card or bid on it. So I do agree. However, it's kind of the most liquid market we have, and it's what we rely on. What do you think, Brendan?
Well, what if someone puts a bin that's too low? Let's say it's a card that like no one's seen in a while, and then they happen to put it at like buy it now, and like the first person, I mean, tons of people have this in saved search, and the first person who sees it's like, that's way too damn low. I'm buying this right now, right? So like, then the other 200 people that wanted access to it didn't get access to it either, right? So like, there's no perfect way to buy and sell. So I mean, I think that the system is like, it's a free market, and I think that when something becomes available, if it sits for a long time, that probably speaks volumes to what that price is, right? And like, there's no such thing as a perfect world where everyone who wants access to that card is going to have exposure to that card, right? So
Exactly.
there's like a variance. I don't know.
Yeah. No, what you just made a great comment there. That comment was excellent, because it if Mitch Grotman is still watching from Grotman Cards, a card came up on eBay about maybe a month ago, and he was the first to see it, and he snapped it up. It happened to be a 2005 Upper Deck the Cup Zygmunt Palffy limited logos. A beautiful, beautiful copy. I think it was 0506. And he snapped it up for like a 20% of what a weaker version of that card would sell for. Now is the price he paid the new comp on that card? Well, it's the only one that people are going to see in the last 12 months, let's say. So that becomes a comp. But I would have paid triple for that card if I saw it first. So it's not all comps are created equal. Phil goes on to say, I see people using auction and sales comps in shows during live stream and make their offers based on that, which is not how it works. This is how you grow the value of sports cardboard. Again, I think the last part is exactly right. If all we did was pay comps, prices would never, ever change. They would be the same forever. So if you're only willing to pay the last comp, or whatever percent of that, whether it's 80% or 110% of it, if you're only willing to pay that comp, you are not advancing the hobby, and you're just a slave to what other people think, really. Professor says apparently Topps or Fanatics is advancing a hobby Hall of Fame. What do you think? I'm going to reserve my thoughts on that until I see who they put in it. If it doesn't start with the likes of Jefferson Burdick and Dr. Beckett and Cy Berger, and even like a Richard McWilliam, a Lud Denny, even a Brian Gray, people who have really like planted their flag in this hobby. If it doesn't start with them and it starts with some of the more prominent social media celebrities, influencers, then I'm gonna think it's a joke. If they do it right, I think it'll be it could be really awesome for sure. Have you seen this, Coach Co? And what do you think?
Yeah, I briefly came across my desk. I think I really hope that they didn't use the voting system that it sounded like they were using. I don't think it was like conveyed to enough people, truthfully. And I think that the people that it should have been conveyed to, or like the vast majority of people, that would have voted in the direction that you were saying with some of the pioneers of this hobby. I don't think that those people had an opportunity to. For instance, like Jeremy, did you vote for any of those people in the Topps Hobby Hall of Fame?
I didn't.
It was
Typed in
so it was a
website.
voting so they opened it up to the public, right? So like anytime you open something up for the public, again, it comes back to like positive content doesn't people don't do what they need to do, right? So it's like if people voted the way that they should have, this Hobby Hall of Fame would end up exactly how it was. So I'm hoping that someone at the top is like, okay, like let's, we took these votes and maybe there's a few like honorary categories for whatever, but like here are the Mount Rushmores, and then we'll build from there.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know the process. I didn't look into it. It wasn't something that interested me at this point. I'll be interested once I see who is elected into the Hobby Hall of Fame. And again, if Burdick and Beckett are not on that inaugural list, I will write it off as being just a silly exercise. It has zero importance in my approach to the hobby. But I hope it does. I hope they do it right. I mean, I think that would be pretty cool for sure. But time will tell. We'll see how that goes. Bob Boozle says, I think we're all going to be disappointed. Hope not, but just don't know. I just don't know at all. The professor says, no, sorry, that one was done. Mark Santucci says card collections. They had to make videos for, he's talking about in order to get elected into the YouTube Hall of Fame, you had to make videos for 3 years to be put in, and 1 year of making videos in order just to vote. He says Jake runs it. I forget Jake's YouTube channel name, but I have seen it to hear him announce it and what the criteria were and how that thing works. So you can check out, again, you guys can check that out, but I don't know what Jake's channel is called. Mark Santucci says, do you guys watch Jake's videos all the time? No, I don't. The only video of his I've ever seen was the one, I think when he took over the YouTube Hall of Fame. Maybe I've seen one other. I don't know what his channel's called. I just don't remember, but seems like a great hobbyist. What about you, Brendan?
I've never.
Yeah. Skeppy says, in marketing studies, they have found certain colors draw you to a specific interest, like red, orange, and yellow promotes food. What colors draw collectors' interest in the most? Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know. Refractor, whatever color is refracting off of the cards.
Yellow.
Gold,
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, gold for sure. The professor says that one content creator has recently said that negative comments from another content creator has led to more followers on his channel. Go figure. I think that's true. As soon as other channels, other content creators start talking about other content creators, it just widens the audience and more people find out. And it's one of the benefits of collaborating with other content creators is that now you're sharing audiences and you can have more followers and grow your audience, find more people who you resonate with, right? I think that's a good thing. And Signed in Slab, David says, nice haircuts, boys. We go to the same barber, obviously. David. Thank you. I gotta say, I had a haircut today, so I appreciate the compliment. How did he know I got a haircut today, right? How did he know? Legends Never Die is the channel for the guy who is, I guess, the commissioner of the YouTube Hall of Fame. Justin Handles wants to know, Coach, how are you going to be up at 4 a.m. tomorrow? That's a great question.
Just gonna do it. I don't know. I mean, the alarm's set for like 4:30, so it might be a little late.
Phil Daw wants to know, Brendan, what are your thoughts on Cards HQ? I find the place is way too big. They're not selling enough product. And how would you know that? How would you know they're not selling enough product if you are not looking at their financial records? But anyways, I don't understand how the business model can be profitable. It barely is in a small shop. Yeah, it's a big store. Thoughts on Cards HQ? I wish Cards HQ nothing but the most success. That's my thoughts. I wish Jeff Wilson and his partners the utmost success, because if that shop is a success, which I think it will be, I think that is a good sign for the hobby. Brendan, anything to add to this question?
Yeah, I was actually there. So I was there for the the trade night in Atlanta. And it is, I mean, probably the most impressive sports card shop I've ever been in. I think it tailors to both adults and kids, and I think that's important. And I think that connection between, father daughter and mother son and father son and so on and so forth, like is integral to continuing to kind of build the hobby forward. Prices on everything seemed reasonable. I don't know what the foot traffic is going to be like on a daily basis, but like obviously they're not doing this without having information. So I think that whatever studies they've conducted or whatever decisions led them to this place were obviously with some sort of educational background behind them, especially considering Jeff Wilson partnered with individuals who had previously opened a hobby shop in the past, and from what I hear is a relatively successful one. So I mean, what I think about it is that we'll just wait and see. I mean, it's a hobby shop. It looks like first of its kind, and I'm curious to kind of see how it works instead of forecasting whether it's going to be profitable or like what they need to do in order to be successful. Like I have no clue. Like, and chances are neither did anybody else in this comment section, right? So like I don't know. Like,
no, I mean, listen, what I like about it is that they are trying something new. They are really trying to advance and evolve the sports card retail experience. I think that's awesome. If it works, that's awesome. If it doesn't work, at least they tried and they put their money where their mouth is. So I respect that. I think I'd like to check it out. Why not? I've always wanted to check out all the card shops. Why wouldn't I want to check this one out? I do want to check it out. Of course I do, because I've never seen anything like it before. I've been to Burbank Sports Cards in Burbank, California several times. Great shop, really cool place. Great atmosphere, great selection. I'm curious to see how Cards HQ like makes you feel versus going into Burbank Sports Cards. If this 14,000 square foot card shop being Cards HQ in Atlanta is empty all the time, there's going to be an empty feeling. You're not going to go in there and get the warm fuzzies. You're going to want to go in there and see there being a lot of other people and some action and laughs and just people having a good time. Atlanta, I hope is a good market for it. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been to Atlanta. Maybe back in my old days of travel. But again, I think I want it to be successful. Simple as that. I don't care who owns it. I don't care what social media influencer in the hobby started, whether it's Jeff Wilson or someone that we've never heard of. I don't care. I want to see it be successful. I wonder how many people out there would feel that same way if it wasn't Jeff Wilson that was one of the people behind it. If it was some no-name hobbyist with 13 followers on Instagram that opened this store, what would people want for it? I don't think they feel that much differently, though. Maybe just with a little less vitriol, but I guess we'll see. Anything to add to that, Brendan?
I think that people would still find a way to be upset about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that it's, I don't know.
For sure. Ziggy No says, by the way, you are both Topps Hall of Fame worthy to me. I'm not going to speak about Brendan, but I'm certainly not Topps Hall of Fame worthy, but thanks, Ziggy. Bobby Burrell says Fanatics should not have this Hall of Fame control. Like, obviously not. And just if you're, okay, well, we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what happens. Ziggy No says, I heard Panini tagged Panini influencer, including Run Good Life. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that even means, Ziggy. Sorry about that. I guess Run Good Life. I know of I think all I know about Run Good Life is that there's a breaker called, I don't know that's what I know. So sorry, I don't know enough about that comment. Stuke says, some people are good looking, the rest have hair. Comment of the night right there. Comment of the night right there. Coach Co liked the Cards HQ has Pokemon cards featured in the front of the store. Any strictly sports card store, well, they're not. And most sports card stores that I know about are most of their business comes from Pokemon anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think even in the title, it says something along the lines of, and Pokemon.
I saw but Pokemon, which was pretty interesting right there. Professor has a question for you. Does TikTok promote breaking and selling of cards like on platforms like Whatnot?
I don't think so. Do they promote breaking and selling of cards? No, actually, I don't think TikTok you're allowed to promote selling cards on there. Like, I think you can have it in the shop, but there's like a certain gambling element that like TikTok doesn't allow for. So I think you have to know what the person is actually purchasing. And it doesn't just go with like sports cards. I know that a lot of people are doing like mystery boxes and stuff like that. Like not even sports card related. Like I know that there were some prominent mystery boxes and, like fill the bag with stuff. And I think they kiboshed that really quickly because they considered it gambling. So I don't think that I that's what I think anyway.
You're on TikTok with your stuff, not necessarily shopping on TikTok for sports cards.
Yeah.
Right on. Eric Sanderson Dorr says, agrees with Jeremy. If Cards HQ is successful, it's good for all of us. Hope it does well. I think that's the hobby friendly attitude. I don't think everyone's going to share. I think a lot of people just want to see Jeff Wilson fail because that'll bring happiness to their lives, I guess. I don't know. But whatever it is, again, I'll just reiterate, I want to see that store be a success. Signed in Slab says, I'm mostly upset because Coach Co trimmed the stash. I got to admit, I noticed that too. And I got to admit, I was also mostly upset because of that. Brendan, what's up? Seriously.
Man, you guys don't know how much maintenance it was, and I'm happy to have my face back a little bit. Like, I mean, I still got the mustache, but it was a lot of maintenance. It was like a lot of maintenance. And I was like, you know what? It's time to switch it up. Also, I found that like so many people were like, oh, like I know you because of the mustache. And I'm like, well, that's great. But I don't want to be tied to anything, especially like a physical attribute, right? Where I'm like, there's a reason why I didn't put it in my logo. And it's awesome that you guys have kind of got to know me and see me, in most cases because of the mustache. And I still have a version of the mustache, but I'm not going to just like keep something because of anyone else. Like if it's driving me nuts, I'm going to get rid of it. So
yeah,
that's kind of been my philosophy the whole time, being authentically me. And I'm sorry.
Well, David says maybe Co could be the one-eyed eyebrow collector. Just a thought. Bob Boozle, yeah, Coach Co in quotes, I am more than just a mustache. The professor says, will either of you consider buying cards online from Cards HQ? I don't really plan to. I don't, I've heard Rob Veras from Burbank Sports Cards say many times that, and show their feedback on eBay, that they're like a top 5 across all of eBay seller. I don't shop Burbank Sports Cards on Beckett Marketplace or eBay, really. Why would I shop Cards HQ personally? Because plus, I don't know how many cards they have that I'm looking for. Would I browse it? I'll browse it maybe a couple times a year just to see what's on there. But no, I'm more of a go in type of thing. I'm also not a customer on the live selling platforms either. So just because a card shop has them doesn't mean. Now, if I was really desperately looking for a certain card, I will check every place I need, but I don't feel I've ever been desperately searching for a card in my whole hobby, 40 plus years of hobbying. I don't think I'm going to start now. Piece of the game. What's going on? Welcome to the show, says Coach Co. Nice episode, boys. And yes, I heard about Yager practicing with the Penguins. Yeah, that's worthy of the feels for sure. Brendan, anything else? We're coming up. We got 5 minutes left here. It's well past your bedtime. This has flown by the way. Anything else on your mind you want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, I think I just want to talk a little bit more about like being supportive to other people. And I'm not here to tell everyone to be nice all the time. It's more in the case of like education. I think that, and I've said this a million times and I'll continue to say it, that I just don't think there's enough education in this space. And there's not really a place to go for education. There's a lot of educational channels, and that's amazing. And people can take tidbits from everybody. And so that I just want everyone to just try to encourage, each other to share that information with new entrants in the hobby, with people who have been in the hobby for a while. I mean, the way that you approach it doesn't have to be in a manner in which like the other person is an idiot for not knowing some of this information. But just kind of treat it like a story and just be excited to have someone else embrace it as much as you do. I think that education is crucial. I think education when it comes to ripping packs and boxes and there's just not enough information in the hobby, in my personal opinion.
You know, I think you have to seek it out. You know, you have to search it out. You have to be willing to sit through some 2-hour live stream sometimes if you want to get some nuggets out that are there. But there are so many content creators that are under they're just under the radar. And why? Because they have small subscriberships. Maybe they don't go all out with their thumbnails. Maybe they're not getting the engagement, so they're not hitting other people's algorithms. But there is stuff out there. And maybe I think if I think about what you just said, if I tweak it a little bit to my perspective, it's that maybe, some content creators who have larger audience could do the hobby a favor by seeking out, discovering some of these under the radar content creators and supporting them to get them to their audiences. Like Iowa Dave on Instagram shares every day, tells you what podcast came out. To me, he's a media partner of mine and everybody else's. If you are a podcaster or a content creator and you show up on the daily Iowa Dave podcast list, he is your media partner. He is doing you a favor. He is helping grow your audience by sharing with his followers who is producing content on a daily basis or whose content is coming out every day. And that, what he does is what I'm talking about. He is the pioneer, in my mind, of doing that. The YouTube Hobby Hall of Fame thing is similar because they are really they're Hall of Famers on YouTube. I've never heard on that list. No offense, and I truly mean that, no offense, but I haven't heard of most of them. I'm only familiar with maybe 10% of the people that have been elected into that YouTube Hobby Hall of Fame. Now, not to say they're not worthy, but I haven't even heard of them. I don't know who they are. Some of them have died by now as well, rest in peace. But so that is a great way to find more under the radar YouTubers that are talking about the hobby and sharing their collections and sharing their knowledge on a regular basis. So I think let's see what Dan's vintage baseball. Dan, what's going on? Dan says, I don't want mega subscribers. Growing my audience from the current 400 in a grassroots way is consistent with my channel content and attitude. Yeah, see, that's organic growth is the best. That's the way I've done it. I'm guessing that's the way you've done it, Brendan. Yeah. I do see some accounts out there, especially on Instagram, where I'm like, whoa, that guy's got triple the followers I do. What? And then you start digging, see, oh, yeah, they got 12,000 followers, but 10,000 of those are bots, like they're not real. That's not organic, and it doesn't really help you anyway because you don't get the engagement. Bob Boozle says, glad the algorithm sent me here after watching a shaving video. That's what you're going to get because that's right. Carbon Chung, the very first guest of Sports Cards Live, has joined us. Carbon, this is the first episode in the new studio, by the way. He says, what up, SCL fan? What up, J. Lee Coach Co? Nice trim on the stash. Late to the party. Carbon, hope you had fun at the Burbank show today. I think I saw you in a picture there. And Skeppy says, how do you teach someone about this hobby when it changes so fast? Is that what they need to know, is how to follow the hobby, not necessarily just learn about it? The question is, how do we teach them when it changes so fast? Shouldn't we teach them how to stay up to date versus just learning about it? Like, how do you stay up to date? It's a good comment, I think. And following guys who put out that daily content about what's going on, not me, I don't do that. Brendan does it. The Sports Card Dad does it. Hobby with Cage does it, a weekly thing. Dan the Card Man puts out daily videos. There are people doing this, so you can find it. You can find your daily stuff. But the hobby does change fast. However, I think there are some things that remain constant, and that's what you get from that evergreen type of content. And that's what I think. How about you, Brendan?
Yeah, I think the fundamentals don't really change, right? Like how to price a card, or they've changed obviously in the last 10, 15 years, but like they haven't changed in like the last little bit, right? So teaching someone how to do that, etiquette when it comes to like grading, for instance, or I think that there's certain things that, which products are generally more desirable what the general markup should be. There's like a few things that I think that, yes, these things fluctuate a little bit, but they're pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah, there are those universal truths and that kind of thing that you learn about. The hobby, I don't know that the hobby is changing because we're seeing. Okay, let me start over. The hobby is changing in the ultra modern world faster than anywhere else. The hobby before that isn't changing that much. So if you learn the history, and like Carbon says, find a mentor, talk to an OG, understand trends. That's not as difficult to do as keeping up with, what's the latest product and what's the latest controversy with the latest product. I don't really care because I'm not buying 2024 Topps baseball or whatever's coming out personally. So I'm not as interested in that. I care more about, is all of a sudden 57 Topps baseball what everybody like why? Did someone just discover the awesome photography? Like, I don't, things like that I think are more interesting for myself. Laura says, if your video is more educational than promoting yourself, count me in. Yeah, and that's, and I think you're going to find a mix on some, but that's a great comment. And then Sign and Slab says, doesn't collecting imply history versus consuming, which is more keeping up with the change? Interesting. That's deep, Brendan. That's some deep stuff right there. That's a whole episode itself, don't you think?
I do.
Yeah.
Of course you throw that.
That's a deep comment, David. Let's have a chat about that. All right, guys, listen, we got to wrap up. It's like 4 hours past Brendan's bedtime. He's got his alarm set for 2 hours from now, so he can get up and go for a walk and put out an inspirational reel on TikTok and Instagram. Brendan, Coach Co. His real name is Brendan. Everybody, if you haven't picked up on that yet, thanks for coming on. It's been a long time coming. I said at the top of the show, we've had the privilege of, I've had the privilege of sitting on panels with you at the Expo in particular, maybe even at the Mint. And it's always been fun. Always just, you're just a pleasure to be around in the hobby. I'm glad you're in it. So thanks for taking the time tonight.
Appreciate you having me as always, man. Even if it's, 4 hours past my bedtime.
Yeah.
No one I'd rather be spending it with. So you're good.
I appreciate that. Well, all right, guys in the chat, thanks for being here. Get your final comments in. We're going to wrap up in about a minute here. The professor says, great new studio with great tall ceilings for a tall content creator and great content episode tonight. Thank you, Professor. Yeah, this part of the house has, we're probably looking at 12-foot ceilings in here, maybe a bit higher. It's a nice little space I'm in right now. Mark Santucci's given us 5 out of 5 stars tonight, Brendan. That's pretty sweet. Thank you to the professor for the last one. All right, guys. Reminder, tomorrow night here on the channel, myself and Josh Madigan from the Hockey Cards Gong Show will be covering the ending of the PWCC weekly hockey auction, their weekly auction with the hockey component. And Monday, MC Mondays Live is back with their showcase auction featuring only items 5,000 or more. I will be calling the action. They are a ton of fun. Sunday show, PWCC, very educational. Monday show, some education, a lot of action. Please join us. Carvin, yes, this is the new house. We moved in on Wednesday. Thank you. Thank you, Stukes. Appreciate that. Mid-Atlantic, good to see you here. We'll have after hours again at some point. I appreciate that. Dan's Vintage, always looking forward to Saturday nights. Thank you, Dan. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Says another great guest. Nice comment for you, Brenda. Robert Scott says, great episode. Lots of positive commentary. Thanks, Robert. Welcome to the show. And Eric Stefano, good to see you there in the chat. Yankees fan, thank you very much. Grotman Cards, thank you. Thank you for the love in the background. I appreciate that. For anyone who came in late, I'm going to give you guys a little peek to what's even higher up. So here you go. Let me just adjust the camera here. So you can see I've got 20 vertical cards above me right there. They're all, kind of really important, iconic cards. And then we got the 4 horizontals over there. And we've got 2 cases with cards. I have room for a 3rd case over there and some more paintings to fill in those gaps up there. And then I've teased it, but maybe I'll show you guys this wall over here. Oh, there's the bubblegum boxes. There's the Timu Solani shelf. Got some other collectibles, old empty tins of the cup over there. What else? Way up there, Nintendo. There you go. Lots of old video games, my kids, some Star Wars stuff, a shelf full of books. Anyway, there you have it, everybody. That's the new. I got to tell you, Brendan, I moved in and like my favorite thing was arranging these shelves because this is like the history of me right up there. It's just awesome. So thank you. Thank you, Jeremy, fellow Fireball Yankees fan. Eric, thanks a lot. Laura, thank you. And Carvin, yes, old cup. Yes, I have empty tins from 05 to about 2015 up there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Brendan, thanks again, buddy. Appreciate you. Say goodbye one more time. I took a while there.
That's okay. Thanks for having me, man. And thank you all for joining and all the positivity. And I hope that we continue to make some wonderful stuff happen in the sports card space.
Let's do it. Let's keep this hobby going, everybody. Jimmy Servianto, welcome and thank you so much. All right, guys. With that, I want to say have a great rest of the weekend. Have a great week ahead if we don't see you here tomorrow or Monday on the PWCC and the MC Monday show. But have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining me here. First episode out of my new home. And with that, this episode of Sports Cards Live featuring Coach Co is now over.